India's heaven, London is hell. And the London Times, Mukunda Maharaj told me, printed in the headlines, Swami says London is hell. Prabhupada likely to get a kick out of it. And Prabhupada asked the BBC guy, they asked him so many questions, peppered him with questions. We can turn this down a little bit. It's like the voice of God. And they asked him so many questions. Prabhupada said, I have a question for you now. And the man said, yes. And Prabhupada said, they say that the sun never sets on the British Empire, because it used to be all over the globe. And then Prabhupada said, then why does it never shine in London? And that calmed down the BBC for a while. Okay. Almost ready? Righty. Thank you, Ram. I'll follow you. Oh, thank you. Hare Krishna. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Balava Girivanadari Gopijana Balava Girivanadari Yasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Chamunitira Vanatari Chamunitira Vanatari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Balava Girivanadari Jasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Chamunitira Vanatari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bo Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Jiraro Madhava Kunda Bihari, Jaya Raro Madhava Kunda Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari, Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari. Jai Vishnupada Paramahansa Paribha Jakacharya Siddha Dashish Miss Divine Grace Abhay Charan Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki, ISKCON DBT Founder Charya Guru Srila Prabhupada Ki, Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur, Prem Shri Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhakti Vrinda Ki, Say Sri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki, Vrindavadam Ki, Mathuradam Ki, Dwarkadam Ki, Navadvip Ki, Jagannapuridam Ki, Jamunamai Ki, Tulsi Maharani Ki, Bhakti Devi Ki, Sambhita Bhakta Vinda Ki. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the divine lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Krishna Sadamo Bhagate Dhammaganadi Bisaha Kalandasa Dashamesha Pararno Konadodita Narayana Namaskritchanam Shaivam Narottama Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudirayat. The Bhagavatam, this is brilliant as the sun, it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied with knowledge, religion, etc. Persons who have lost their vision to the dense darkness of the age of Kali should get light out of this Purana. Before beginning our study of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a very means of conquest, we should first offer respects to the personality of God in Narayan, to the Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, the goddess alluring Mother Saraswati, the author Srila Vyasadeva, and my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada. So we are on, assuming we're in the same universe, we're on Canto 5, Chapter 12, Text 9. And Jad Bharat is speaking to King Rahugana, trying to get him back on course. Evam niruktam shiti shabda vritam asat nidanat parama annava ye. I guess I should read from where you're reading. Avidyaya manasa kalpitas te yesam samuhena krito viseshaha evam naruktam shiti shabdavrittam asannidanat paramanavo ye avidyaya manasa kalpitaste yesam sumuhena krito visheshaha evam naruktam shiti shabdavrittam asannidanat paramanavo ye avidyaya manasa kalpitaste yesam sumuhena krito visheshaha evam naruktam shiti shabdavrittam asannidanat paramanavo ye avidyaya manasa kalpitaste yesam sumuhena krito visheshaha evam niruktam shiti shabdavrittam evam niruktam shiti shabdavrittam asannidanat paramanavo ye avidyaya manasa kalpitaste yesam sumuhena krito vishesha evam niruktam shiti shabdavrittam asannidanat paramanavo ye avidyaya manasa kalpitaste yesam sumuhena krito visheshaha evam niruktam shiti shabdavrittam asannidanat pramanavo yadve avidyaya manasa kalpitaste yesham sumuhena krito vishesha. No, all right. I just don't want you to feel left out. Next, word for word. Evam, thus, niruktam, falsely described. Shiti shabda, of the word earth. Vritam, the existence. Asat, not real. Nidanat, from the dissolution. Parama anava, atomic particles. Yea, all of which. Avidyaya, because of less intelligence. Manasa, of the mind. Kalpita, imagined. Te, they. Yesham, of which. Samuhena, by the aggregate. Krita, made. Viseshaha, the particulars. One may say that varieties arise from the planet Earth itself. However, although the universe may temporarily appear to be the truth, it ultimately has no real existence. The Earth was originally created by a combination of atomic particles, but these particles are impermanent. Actually, the atom is not the cause of the universe, although some philosophers think so. It is not a fact that the varieties found in the material world simply result from atomic juxtaposition or combination. I'll say, you say. One may say that varieties arise from the planet Earth itself. However, although the universe may temporarily appear to be the truth, it ultimately has no real existence. The Earth was originally created by a combination of atomic particles, but these particles are impermanent. Actually, the atom is not the cause of the universe, although some philosophers think so. It is not a fact that the varieties found in the material world simply result from atomic juxtaposition or combination. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Those who follow the atomic theory think that the protons, electrons of atoms combine in such a way to bring all material existence into being. However, the scientists fail to discover the cause of the atomic existence itself. Under these circumstances, we cannot accept that the atom is the cause of the universe. Such theories are advanced by unintelligent people. According to real intelligence, the real cause of the cosmic manifestation is the Supreme Lord. Jamadasa yataha. That is from the beginning of the Bhagavatam and also Vedanta Sutra. He is the original cause of all creation. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 10:8, Aham sarvasya prabhaho matasarvam pavartate. Krishna is the original cause. Sarvakarana karanam from the Brahma Samhita. He is the cause of all causes. Krishna is the cause of the atoms, the material energy. Bhimarapo nalo vayu kammano bidarevacha ahankarar itiyam me bina prakritir astadha. The universal cause of the Supreme is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and only those in ignorance try to find out other causes by posing different theories. Omagana timirandasya gyanagana salakaya jakshushu militan gina tazareshi gurave namaha. Well, I guess I'll say it this way. It's not that if you look at a Oriental rug or a Persian rug, if you got it right close to your face, you can just see a little part of the design, right? If you get some distance, you could say, oh, well, that's a paisley and it fits in here. And eventually you can see the whole picture. With enough distance, you can see the whole picture. So it's not that the Vedic literature doesn't understand all the different, because there's so many theories. The point being made, this sounds a lot like the general reductionist theory, which means that, not to give you a headache, but if you remember being back in school and there was the atomic chart with all the elements on it, and you've got H, and you've got O, and you combine two H's and one O, and what do you get? Water. So the idea is that everything is a combination by the laws of, physics and the laws of chemistry. Everything is, fits together. The Vedas give the example that you can see a clay pot. If you have a simple, not a fired pot, but let's say, not a shellac, but a regular earth pot like you see in India. What will happen to that pot if you leave it out in the elements long enough? What's the earth? What is the pot made out of? And what is clay? It's simply earth. If you leave it out in the elements long enough, what will happen? It'll merge back into the earth. So the idea is that everything is Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that the material nature is constantly mutable. It's always shifting and changing. We'll get into this next part a little bit later, but it's actually called by the sages and sadhus that this world is a river of names. Now it's in this form, and we're calling it, of course the temple is sublime, but we're calling it a building. Well, let's take this. This is a microphone. But you leave it alone long enough, what will it revert back to? It'll devolve back into its original components. So right now, it's like I can take clay and I can push it into and I can make a rabbit, or I can push it into, I can make a plate out of it. It's constantly mutable and can shift and change. But its essential elements are that earth. And now I'm putting a label on it. Just like I'm saying, oh, I'm this body. But what is it? Dust to dust, ashes to ashes. And the Vedas are a little more refined. This body is destined to be three things. Dust, earth, stool, and ashes. The Parsis, they leave it out in the, if you leave a body out, whatever, it's eaten by the animals, and they evacuate it. So it goes from this nice, beautiful, Prabhupada says in one lecture, with a nice pompadour, nice little fluffed hair and whatever it is, and exercise, jog. We're not against exercising and jogging, but you can exercise and jog and get everything in the right place, in the right shape, toned properly. But in due course, this beautiful body, what does it become? So there it is. So everything, now I'm saying I'm American. This is Badrinarayan Swami. I'm saying this is a table, this is a microphone, but it's really just a river of names. It's just the way I push matter together, and I've given it a title. So Mahasrahugana is thinking that he's a king. Prabhupada says later on, maybe earlier on in one of the verses, that you've got the four carriers carrying the palanquin and the king sitting on it, right? The four bears holding up the different poles, and Mahasrahugana is riding on it. So this is a palanquin carried by the laws of material nature, and we're riding on it. And we're thinking, oh, I'm Badrinarayan Swami, or oh, I'm a king, or oh, I'm Bhakti Daniel, or whatever it is. But it's always shifting and changing, and that's not reality. Reality means, and what is the classic example given about this temporary manifestation of this material world? And it has to do with the weather. I'll give one more hint. It has to do with weather and seasonal changes. Well, the rain season comes, and it pours rain, and all the vegetation comes up. And it's all green and bright and fresh, especially where they have seasons. But in due course of time, summer comes, dries everything up, winter comes, fall comes, all the leaves fall off, and in winter, everything's bare and abandoned. And in the spring, it's cyclical. It's manifest in the spring, it comes to fruition in the summer, it begins to dissolve in the fall, then it goes back to whatever it is, mulch and whatever, in the wintertime. So this material, it's temporary. This is the different, well, I'll get there in a minute, hopefully. The point we're trying to make is that we're labeling everything and we're putting values on everything, but what is it really? Just like a mirage, or what is it? You were giving class the other day. I was listening to somebody giving class. They were talking about flowers in the sky. which is just imaginary. It's like I said, castles. Don't they say in America, castles in the sky? You're building castles in the sky, but it has no substance. It has no base. Sand castles. You watch the kids down there at the beach. You know, I was watching a brother and sister the other day, and they made a little sand castle, and they had some seaweed. He had a crown, so they'd found some McDonald's, crown or something. Talk about illusion. And they had their whole castle. They had their whole. They were playing for quite some time. I was talking with a devotee, and they were playing for about an hour. They were completely absorbed in their world. And what did they not notice? They didn't notice the tide coming in, and their kingdom and their palace and their crown and everything just washed away. So it's described in the Vedas with the waves of time. So the Vedas, the question is how to look at the world unvarnished. We have so many conceptions I remember in elementary school, we used to divide up in teams. And of course this is late 50s, whatever it is, early 60s. And they divide into teams, Republicans and Democrats. I had no idea what a Republican was or a Democrat was. But my parents were Republicans, so there it is. I am a Republican. So I had no idea what a Democrat was. Well, my parents are Democrats, so whatever it is, So we're just accepting so many concepts. This is true, this is good, this is right. There's a saying, I'll give you an example. It's called Ask Why 5 times. And that's what Sankhya Yoga is. Sankhya Yoga means okay. Sankhya Yoga, just like it describes here, there's earth. But more subtle than earth, because earth has form. More subtle than earth, earth has fragrance. More subtle than earth, according to the Vedic evolution of how this world manifests or unfolded, more subtle than earth is water. Why? Because water has taste. More subtle than earth, which has fragrance, water, which has taste. A little more subtle than that is fire. Because fire has no taste. Don't try it at home. Fire has no taste. It has no fragrance. Don't try it. Anyway. But it has form. Water has form. Earth has form. But each is a little bit less. So air has touch. It has no form. You can't see the air in here. But how do you know if the wind is blowing? Don't overthink it. So here's your inside. Cold, that's true. But you can also look outside and you'll see the leaves are moving. So you can feel, so air, although it doesn't have taste, except nowadays with smog and so many things, it shouldn't have form, it shouldn't have taste. The Detroit River caught on fire, but generally speaking, water doesn't have form. So it gets more and more subtle. So earth has all four. It has taste, form, touch, smell, and fragrance. A little more subtle is like I say, is water, which has taste but no form. Sorry, that has taste but no smell. A little more subtle is air, which has no taste, no smell, and no form, but you can feel it. Little more subtle is ether, which carries sound, and so it goes. These are the basic elements. So the Vedas break things down. Sankhya Yoga says, okay, well, this was caused by this. Well, this is dependent on this. And that's what basic science is. You break everything. The idea is that you can break everything down into little pieces. Now they're what? They're nanoparticles. What are they down to? Quarks, neutrinos. They're breaking it down into small. And the theory is, if I can break everything down to its smallest parts, and I understand the laws of chemistry and mathematics, I can reconstitute and I can control it. And ultimately, this is caused by this, this is caused by this, this is caused by this. So that's the principle of Sankhya Yoga, and that's the principle of reductionist. To give an example, in the Vedas there's something called, what is the Sanskrit for a hex atom? There's a Sanskrit word for it. I mean, anu is sometimes used as a description of matter, of an atom. But it's described, if you ever watch the sunlight come through a screen or through a window, and you see those little particles that float up, that's the Vedas break things down to that, and 8 particles of a I forget the Sanskrit name of it, makes a hex atom. And so many hex atoms. So they understand the whole atomic theory. It's all there. They've got time broken down to, what is it? A muhurta, and smaller than a muhurta is a danda, and they've got time broken down, and when you expand it out, it goes all the way back to the breath of Mahavishnu. Lava, yeah. So it's not that the Vedas don't understand how matter is working, but as is being pointed out in this purport, okay, well, what caused it all to come together? Find me an example in life, real life, where matter self-organized into a higher state. The idea is that, well, was it prebiotic soup? Is that how they start off? It's prebiotics. This guy, Stephen Miller, up here at UCSD, combined different chemicals, shot electricity through it. I think he got the Nobel Prize for it. And he created, those formed together into amino acids. And they said he's created life. Actually, a single cell, you take so many amino acids, they have to organize into very complicated proteins. And those proteins combine into very complicated cells. It's like if I came to you with a hubcap. Suppose I gave Vijay a hubcap and said, here's your new Prius. Is he going to be satisfied? Is he going to go out on Sankirtan? What are you going to skid along in that Prius? What are you going to do? In that hubcap? Well, you say, and I charge you for it. What did we just pay for that new Prius? $13,000, something like that? Whatever it is. Suppose you give me $13,000 and I give you a Prius hubcap. You going to be happy with that? You're no fool. And I said, well, no, it's all there. You just can't see it. So the point is that so-called they created life. That's what they actually created. They combined, so let's get into that. They combined those chemicals and created some basic amino acids. And it's about 1,000 steps before you get the first living cell. And they have no idea how it happened. This building, suppose you only have $25,000. You'd like a mansion in La Jolla, but you only have $25,000 or whatever it is. So I buy you an empty lot, a little corner of a lot in La Jolla. And then I stack up all the building materials. And with that special ingredient, TNT, I'm going to blow your house into existence. Swami's By Chance Construction Company. You're going to invest, And the idea is, so Prabhupada said, first thing that Vedas are saying, well, okay, everywhere you see order, pattern, symmetry, design, there's intelligence behind it. Everywhere. We just had this building, those very blissful volunteers came in, artists, and redid everything. Why does the temple look like this? What happens if we just leave the temple alone and nobody touches up the paint? Nobody mops the floors. You see those old, what is it, I'm trying to think of whatever. Angkor Wat, or you see those old, with the vines growing through it and the banyan trees and the whole. Can you stack all the ingredients in one place, and if you just wait long enough, you'll come back and there'll be a building? Nobody constructed it, no architect, no plan, no electrical engineer, and it's just going to self-form? We have the Sunday feast this evening, Sunday program. And they come in, there's no chairs, there's no place to sit, no bhajan, no microphone. And especially no prasadam because nobody cooked? Is it all just, are the potatoes just going to jump in the pot all on their own? It's got to be an intelligence. There's got to be a higher force directing it. So intelligence means, okay, you got all these components, you got all this earth. Where's the potter to put the pot together? Who organized everything? My favorite example, and I did a little research on it last night, it's the 787 Dreamliner. I was flying to India, and a man sat down next to me. I'm reading Bhagavatam. I think it was Chaitanya Charitamrita, actually, but I was reading. And the man said, oh, he's an Indian man. He said, oh, I see that you're Krishna Bhakta. I said, way to go, Sherlock. How'd you figure that one out? You know, but okay, sure, I'm a devotee. He said, oh, well, I'm an atheist. And I was thinking, this is going to be a long flight. Because the guy was chatty, too, and I thought, oh, well, what to do? I just want to read Chaitanya Charita. But he started it. So, you know, he shot with a shot across the bow, I'm an atheist. I said, oh. I say, what do you do? What do you work as? He said, I'm an aeronautics engineer. He worked for Boeing. He was an aeronautics engineer. He really was. And he said, and I helped design the 787 Dreamliner. I said, really? I said, did you do it all by yourself? He said, no. He said, there were teams, different teams. And I was head of the hydraulics team. I said, okay. I said, how many teams? He said, well, there was the electrical team, there was the navigation team, there was so many different teams, you know. He told me there were about 15 teams. I said, how many on a team? He said, about 150. I said, okay, so you and 150 people designed the 787 Dreamliner. He said, yes. I said, okay, let me ask you a question. Now, do they ever crash? And I mean, you know, let's not get personal, and we're on a plane, but, you know, how about it? He said, yeah, they crash sometimes. And anyone know what one of the biggest pollutants in the world is? Jet fuel. It's one of the most biggest, you know, causes of all the, you know, greenhouse gassing and the whole thing. Jet fuel. And how many people can you put on? I think that I looked it up yesterday. The 787 can fit about 350 people on it. So they crash. They're bumped sometimes. You never hear, you know, they make an announcement, you know, please fasten your seatbelts. We're going to get some turbulence. And I don't know what it cost. Just to fly to Denver cost us how much? It was expensive. The two of us, it was like close to $950, something like that, you know. Now, he's proud of creating the 787 Dreamliner. And he didn't do it by himself. It took 15 teams, 10 each, minimum 10. That doesn't include all the other, you know, the pre-assembled parts that they bought. You know, but it took 150 of the best and brightest to design this 787 Dreamliner, which crashes, which has turbulence, which pollutes, which is carrying only 350 people max, is super expensive to fly on. Now, I say to him, now, sir, let's compare and contrast. Help me with some consistent logic. Now, let's look at planet Earth. Let's compare planet Earth to your 787. Planet Earth never crashes. It never has turbulence. Never Boomy says, hey, fasten your seatbelts, buddies. We're going through some rough spell here. Never. It doesn't pollute anything. And check this out. A 787 goes at, I think its maximum speed, if they really punch it, and with tailwinds behind them, is about 700 miles. Now, the planet Earth is moving around the sun at 1,800 miles per second. Try that in your 787. And, you know, Krishna's the trance will show up, like he lifts Govardhan on hill with his little finger. At the same time, the Earth is spinning. I don't know the speed that it's spinning. Try that in your 787. Jack up a 787 to 1,800 miles a second and spin it simultaneously. And amazingly enough, anybody feel any ruffling through their hair? Anybody get their seatbelt on? And nobody charges you? You don't get any frequent flyer miles, but nobody charges you flying on planet Earth. So my question to him was, I said, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Loka Maheshwaram, that Krishna is the designer, creator, controller of all planets. You're proud. That plane did not happen by chance. You're very proud of it. And yet, You're flying on a far more sophisticated spaceship, and you're asking me to accept that there was no intelligence, no designer, and it happened by chance. I say, can you help me out with some seamless logic here? He said, Swami, I have to finish my tea. And he was quiet for the rest of the flight, which was Krishna's mercy on me, you know. But the point is that, how is it possible? And then Prabhupada just doubles down on it. And later on I can tell you a Christian joke, but Prabhupada doubles down on it. Okay, fine. Let's accept for a moment that somehow all these random atoms combined together by evolution. Here's another classic example that Sariputta pointed out to me. Because the idea is by genetic mistakes you get mutations. And by mutations, you know, my tongue is longer than somebody else's. I'm in a frog body. I got a longer tongue. Then I can snack more, you know, flying insects. So I'll live longer. And my children who inherit my genetic, you know, my longer tongue, they'll live longer. And eventually all those with a shorter tongue in their genes, they all die out. And those with longer tongues live. And this is how you have evolution. This is how we evolved from monkeys. This is how we evolved from prebiotic soup. That's how. So the presentation is things that improve. They become more complicated. They become more sophisticated. That's the whole principle of evolution. By, survival of the fittest, you know, and mutations, you get higher species. That's how the whole thing works. But let me ask you this. Do we ever find that things evolve into a higher state? If you leave this harmonium alone, will it evolve into a trombone or a flute? Just wait long enough. Give it enough chance. Put two Mercedes in a car, in your garage. Are they going to make baby Mercedes? Well, they're not organic. I've heard all the arguments. Here's a classic example. Things devolve genetically. The classic example is that the colonists for Australia, some of them went with their families and went with children, and they took white rabbits. White, you know, little white rabbit, right? Now, those white rabbits left alone, you know what happened? Without continually breeding them with other white rabbits, you know what happened? What? They devolved back down to the little brown bunny rabbit, the little, you know, wild rabbits. Anything you leave alone. You do mutations with dogs. You know how they can. First off, you know, there's so many types of dogs. You know, you got your little Chihuahua and you got your Saint Bernard and this, and that's all done by breeding. But you leave them alone, and they will devolve back to their original state. You'll never find a cat evolving into a dog, much as they'd like to. So you never find a simple structure without the action of an outside intelligence. It never evolves into a more complicated state. It just doesn't happen. There's no example of it. So, okay, fine. Even we push all of that aside. What time is it? Prabhupada says, even you put all of that aside, here's the coup de grace. Let's accept for a moment, okay, matter self-organized itself and evolved into higher forms, although there's no example of it. What's Prabhupada's coup de grace that he asks? That all this stuff organized itself? There was a big bang, what does Prabhupada say? Where did it come from? Where did all the matter come from? Even you accept that it's self-organized into all these complicated structures and features, where did it come from? What they say, what they actually say, they teach it at MIT and Caltech and UCLA and wherever you go. They say that the smallest thing you've got is a singularity. And they say that for some reason, unknown, a singularity, all matter exploded out of a singularity. This guy, Stephen Gould, or whatever his name at MIT, says that the universe, existence as we know it, is the original free lunch. They can do the math. You know, when you go to those physics class or whatever, and they got all the blackboards sliding behind the other, and they got little Einstein there with this, frizzed hair working it out. They can take it all the way back to the nanosecond before that singularity. But there's so many points. Here's a point, here's a point, here's a singularity, here's a singularity. Why aren't they all matter flowing out from them? You know what their answer is? I swear to you, give us one free miracle and we can explain the rest. We don't know what caused it to explode. We don't know what all matter came out of it and why not from this point and that point and this point, this singularity. But you give us one free miracle. So our simple point is that, as it's being described here, we've gone a bit over, but the Vedic Sankhya Yoga asks, this is the ultimate question to ask. Where did it all come from? I was going to give you my 5, and we'll end there. I was going to give my ask why 5 times. So I was in Burma, Myanmar, and I walked, our temple's on a big hill, and I walked down the hill, and I was getting some office supplies or something. And I was talking to the clerk who was going to college. He was a nice guy. He was interested. I said, why don't you come to our program? We got some programs tonight at the temple. He said, nah, I can't. I said, why? That's one. He said, well, I have a big test. I have a big test. And I have to study. I said, why? He said, I want to get a good grade. I said, why? He said, well, I want to graduate with honors. I said, why? He said, well, I want to get into a postgraduate course in America. I said, why? He said, I want to get a big job. I want to get a good job. I said, why? He said, well, I want to make money. I said, why? He said, then I can get a big house and a big car. I said, why? He said, then I can get a beautiful, qualified wife. I said, why? He said, then I'll be happy. I said, aha. All of those are intermediate steps that you want to become happy. I said, I come from America. There's plenty of big houses and beautiful wives. And so I said, why do you think I'm here studying the Vedic culture? Why? Did you ever think about that? So if we ask why, okay, this rests on this rests on this, what is the actual truth? And here it's describing, ultimately, as it says here in these verses, that everything emanates from Krishna. And we can say, we have a body. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that the body is the dictionary, that the material world is the dictionary for the spirit. Just like people say, well, how can God be present everywhere and have a form? You're saying that God has a form, Krishna's playing a flute, he's there in the spiritual world. I don't believe it. Because if God is present everywhere, how can he be localized? Gotcha. What's our answer? What is this dictionary to the spirit, this material world? What is something we see every day that refutes the idea that something cannot not have form and be all pervasive? Actually, you see it twice a day. Okay, that's a good one. But the sun and the moon. Who said moon? Yeah. Isn't the sun? You can point. There's the sun. Little kids, they'll put, it's disappeared. So it appears, it's localized, but isn't the sun all pervasive? And at night, just to double down, we had a beautiful moon the last few weeks. It's been a beautiful moon. And it's shining everywhere, but it's localized. And how can the cause of unlimited objects which are localized and present everywhere, because there's unlimited suns in the universe, how can the sun, how can the creator of those unlimited suns that are localized and present everywhere, but he can't do it? Krishna can't be everywhere? Krishna's in every atom, he's in everyone's heart, God is present everywhere, and he's also got his place. So the simple point we're trying to make is that we should, that's what I was going to say. This body, it creates so many chemicals. I don't want to go into describing them. But the fact of the matter is this body creates so many chemicals. And all creation, existence we see, comes out of the body of God. We create sweat, mucus, which just before breakfast, I'm not going to spend much time on it. But the body, our body, creates so many chemicals. God's body, Krishna's body, as Mahavishnu, Karanadakshayi Vishnu, everything comes out of the body of the Supreme Lord. It's not unreasonable, it's completely practical. So, in summation, that we are riding on this river of names, these constantly changing forms, and thinking this is truth, this is reality, this is what I am, but it's a complete illusion. Doesn't mean it's not, we have to deal with it, but it's temporary. And we should ask why. Where did it come from? What is the cause? How is it organizing? And the conclusion will be that there is a Supreme Lord. One last progression to leave you with. From that awareness, it's the first step in God realization in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's explaining, all right, I'm dependent on all of this stuff. I didn't create it. I don't control it. Who did create it? Who did control it? And if one is thoughtful, one going from a sense of dependence, like they say Mother Earth, you know, the child can't live without the mother. So from that sense of dependence, what's the next natural evolution? Dependence comes gratitude. From gratitude, what's the next natural emotion? Service. And after service, what's the next natural evolution? Love, devotion, appreciation. So if one understands what's going on in this world, one cannot escape the fact that I am existing. Prabhupada said, you think you're sitting on the floor, all these atoms and molecules and everything moving around. I'm sitting in the hand of Krishna. That was Prabhupada's statement. So from that awareness of dependence and grace comes gratitude, comes devotion, comes service, and comes love. So that's why this stuff matters, to have that picture within your mind. Okay, we can end there. We're over time.
Maharaj?
Oh, nope. We're over time. You'll have to put a cork in it for a moment. I know you're very enthusiastic. I don't want you to explode. But, okay, the joke, because I promised the joke and we'll end here. So, you know, it's a Christian joke. They say that at the creation there was earth, and God took earth and breathed life into it, and there was life. That's from Genesis. So now anything God can do, we can do better, right? Whatever God can do, we can create, we can make. Of course, God makes a flower, make a plastic flower. 5,000 years from now, that flower will still be here. A natural flower biodegrades, it's fertilizer, It has a fragrance, it creates seeds. But I can make a plastic flower. I imagine I could make a perfumed plastic flower, right? I could put in some noxious carcinogenic that gives you a fake smell of lavender or something like that. There were some garbage bags. I had some garbage bags you opened. They smelled like lavender. I said, oh, it says on the box. Oh, how many brain cells is that killing? But so we're a poor imitation. But the idea is we don't need God anymore. We've got it all figured out. We figured out where life comes. We figured out how it's all going. We don't understand the laws of chemistry, the laws of physics, laws of mathematics. We can do it all. I mean, it's a complete bluff. So this materialistic, atheistic reductionist is saying to God, we don't need you anymore. Go spend your time playing your harps up there with the, angels. We got it all figured out. Anything we can do, you can do better. So we don't need you anymore. So God says, okay, but being a kind person, he says, I just want to make sure you've got it together. Before I hand over the steering wheel to you, I want to make sure you can drive the car. Okay, fine. So God says, well, hold on. Let's see if you can. How did creation begin? I took clay and I breathed life into it and it became alive. So now let's see you do it. So the scientist starts to push together some clay. God says, hang on a minute. Get your own clay. You follow? Where did it all come? Okay, we can end there. Thank you very much. All glories to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Sorry about that, Vijay, but I went over time. Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, next time, next class.
All right, save it for later.
Yes, next Sunday.
Thank you, Vijay. He's in
Maharaj,
Portugal.
thank you very much.
Is it Portugal? Yeah.
Yes, Azores Archipelago, the 9 Portuguese islands.
Are you out on the Azores? Where are you?
Azores Archipelago, the 9 Portuguese islands between Europe and your continent, United States of America. We are in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, isolated.
Sounds like you're nowhere.
Yes, in the middle of nowhere.
But you're connected to the Krishna. It's very auspicious.
By your grace, Maharaj, you're being very kind. Thank you very much.
Jeez, it's got to be lonely out there. Maybe that's what sent you, Daniel. You'll be all alone.